Alright, I'm going to be inking up one of Dan DeCarlo's very last commission sketches he did for my good friend Greg Beta. I believe he drew this, from what Greg said, just a few months before his passing away. So it's a real privilege to be inking Dan DeCarlo again. I did some Archie comic books of Dan's way back when. I'm talking 10, 15 years ago. So with Betty and Veronica here, I usually, because I have more ink on my brush right away, I'll start with something that's nice and solid so I can get some of that ink on the page. And then I don't want totally a lot of ink if I go in on some other detailed areas. So we can hit some of her arms here. I like to start with some nice bolder areas, like her back on this side is a nice big heavier line. As you know, the Archie style, we like to go a little heavier. If you can do one big brush stroke like that, a nice clean brush stroke in one fluid motion, that's nicer. That's a heavier line on her bottom leg over here. Now on the top legs, where the sunlight is shining, it's just a little bit thinner. So we can give some weight where the shadow would be on the bottom of her calf over here. The top line is just going to be a little bit thinner. Again though, if you can get it in one smooth, complete line, that's a little easier. Move the page. I usually do a backhanded stroke, as opposed to like drawing with a pencil. When you're inking, a nice gliding backhanded stroke works best for me. And I think most inkers would agree with that. Little thin lines in here on her toes, where you don't need to go so heavy. Veronica's dainty little feet. And then some of these littler details in here around the ankle. You want those to be nice and delicate. So I just re-dipped my ink, so I'm going to use some of that on the hair again. A nice big black area where I have too much ink on the brush. Instead of going over here on my scratch sheet and dabbing some of it off and wasting the ink, I go with my fresh ink on an area that needs a lot of ink. Classic highlights. I use the Koslowski brush, sable brushes. Winsor Newton is probably the most well-known brush for inking. Most professional inkers use the same. Connoisseur also makes a good one. Princeton does Koslowski brushes too, with the Koslowski hair. It's just supple hair. It holds a lot of ink. As you can see, I dipped this a minute ago or so, and I've been using it a lot, and there's still a lot of ink in this brush. Gotta have a good brush to do inking. Now, unfortunately, this isn't a premium grade of paper. Usually it's a nice, sturdy 2-3 ply bristle board, and this is more of a inkjet paper. It's thick, it's more of a cardstock, I should say. So it's starting to buckle a little bit, but it's still holding the ink pretty well. No spider webbing, so that's good. Delicate on the nose. A little more deft touch on his nose, her little eyebrow. See, now I've got less ink on my brush, so I can go in here and do some of the delicate stuff. Her neckline. Nice thin lines in here. Let's see, her rib cage is a thin line. We don't want it to be heavy. Her bikini. Looks like Dan forgot a belly button. I'm going to put a belly button in. That's my inker's discretion here. Alright. These fingers over here, we don't need to go heavy on these. We want to create the perception that they're more delicate. Don't want to give her man hands. See, I haven't even dipped this brush in the last 3-4 minutes now, and it's still got a ton of ink in it. Alright, a little bit more ink. So you can see a little bottle of ink will go a long way. One line on her whole leg there. Okay. I always start with the objects in the foreground first, and then I work my way back. Seems like a obvious thing to do, but a lot of people, they don't know there's a method to the madness. So you're working thicker and then thinner as you go back. These lines in the background where these little weeds, for example, are, I'm just going to touch those light so that the foreground objects are thicker and heavier. The background objects are a little lighter, more delicate, so Veronica pops better. All right, Veronica's almost done. A lot of people ask me about the glove. That's not because my hand is hurt. I don't have carpal tunnel. It just helps my hand glide across the paper more. The oil's in my hands or perspiration, then your hand will stick on the paper, and this helps it slide across the paper. Some stripes on her bikini. And to show like there's some sunlight, I'm going to go lightly up towards the top, and then I'm going to give it heavier on the bottom so it looks like a nice dark stripe that's got a little sunshine on the top. Some delicate lines up top to a heavier full stripe underneath. And her nice lips. This is where you need to make sure you don't have a lot of ink on your brush. I often ink the top lip in fully, like she's got lipstick on. And there, Veronica is done. Now we can move on to Betty. And like a little mistake there, that's where you use a little bit of whiteout or whatever. Some foreground lines. Sitting near the edge of the water. Alright. Betty's up. There we go. What I like about this sketch, I don't know if it comes through completely, but it's a rough sketch. Dan obviously did it a little bit quicker. It's still awesome, but it gives me a little bit more challenge because it is rough to smooth it out. I don't like if the pencils are super tight. Then it truly is more of just a tracing. For this, I have to use a little bit more of my skills. On a personal note, I used to be more Team Betty. When people ask me who would you pick, Betty or Veronica, Betty, of course. She's going to be more loyal. She's an all-American girl. That Veronica's bad news. But as I get older, I see the attraction to Veronica. Sassy. All right. This in here, he kind of had the fingers and stuff not finished off, so I like that. I get to do a little bit more drawing as I'm inking than figuring it out. The classic patented little triangle nose from Archie. I love it. It's just a brilliant design. They're just catching the bottom of the nose with one little triangle. Whoever first did that, I don't know if it was Bob Montana or if it was Stan Goldberg or Dan DeCarlo. Whoever patented the Archie nose, that was the best move ever. The Archie girl's nose, I should be more specific. Alright, get some little movement flowing in her hair, blowing in the wind here, in the ponytail. And as you can see, I haven't had to re-dip my brush in quite some time. Again, that's the Koslowski Sable holding a lot of ink. They're a watercolor brush, but they're, primarily a watercolor brush, and they work terrific for inkers. Alright, Betty's got some polka dots. Throw those in there a little bit. And no, I have not forgotten their eyeballs. The eyeballs is the one thing when I ink Archie, that's the only really thing in some fine backgrounds where I get out the technical pens. So as soon as I get these last few polka dots in, alright, got a little bit of some delicate abdominal. So I use the nice Stettler pigment liners or microns. These are great, they're color fast, and you just have a little bit more control than the brush for these tight circles. They want these ovals or circles to be precise at Archie Comics. And then some of the little stuff in the background too. I'll get a super, like a 005 for these clouds, so that they're very thin and delicate lines. And that's all I really use the markers for. Some of the fine stuff in the background, eyeballs. Alright, let's do some shadows, some more water here, and this guy's done. Rippling water, a little bit of shadow where Veronica's Leg is in there. Alright, we got a little shadow on Veronica. This is nice when you have a little bit of a dry brush thing going here. She's laying on a beach, so if your brush is a little bit dry, it actually gives an appearance of like sand, which looks really nice. A little texture on here, a couple of little dots. And I believe we have just